Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Quirk, and I'm here with my host, Ethan Pachersky. Ethan Pachersky.
Is that as in like you're parasitic and I am your host?
Yeah, this is a parasitic relationship.
Oh, and it always has been.
Yeah. You're sort of like you're sort of like a guinea worm. Yeah.
I,
don't
okay.
don't Google that, guys. So anyway, so listen, we have a podcast due today, allegedly. Many say. Do you have any insight on why we're here? Why millions are listening in as we speak.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
why have they gathered here?
Well, I've been told we're going to be reviewing Pool A of the World Baseball Classic, and
Wait.
I think the interesting part of that is it's got some good teams in here. The Netherlands. We're going to have a guest on to talk about Cuba, Italy, Panama is a good baseball nation, and then the host country. And I don't want to besmirch them. Is Chinese Taipei. And to my understanding, they're like the third best baseball nation in Asia. Like they're firmly behind Korea and Japan, but they've
Mm-hmm.
got the CPBL, which is a good league. They've got a lot of homegrown guys that are in, the minor leagues or in their developmental league, and they've produced, I think, like 15 major leaguers, 16 major leaguers. Like they're doing all right. I just don't know anything about baseball in Taiwan. So
Yeah, we know some of the players, and we do know Chin Ming Wong, who is one of their coaches. He is their bullpen coach. So
as
we
he
we
should
do
be.
know him. But outside of that, yeah, we are looking at a team that we're not super familiar with, but it does look like, according to this article by Michael Clare on MLB.com, he appears to be of the opinion that this is going to be a offensive team. So,
Well,
I
should
mean,
we just run down these because these are the names that stuck out to me. They've got a few ex major leaguers on here. They've got
mhm.
Chi Wei who pitched a couple of games, I think, for the Padres or the Pirates or something. A
Okay.
couple of games. CC Lee, he was a Cleveland Indian in like 2015, I think.
Hmm.
Jen Ho Sang was a Cub, but he pulled out of the WBC. He was replaced by a CPBL guy. And then they've got Wei Chung Wong, who also pitched a couple of games in the majors. None of these guys had long, successful major league careers. They more had cups of coffee. And then on offense, they've only got two big leaguers. They've got Yu Chang, might be Chong, I'm not sure, who has kind of bounced around. He was with Cleveland and I think Boston, the Pirates. I want to say he was a Ray. He's a utility infield guy who kind of got some hype as a prospect, so maybe he can turn into something. He's probably, I would think, their best player. And they've also got
Right.
Zue Lin, who is kind of a big shortstop prospect with the Twins, I think, or it might have been the Red Sox, I forget. And then it sort of just never panned out. I know he played on the Twins and Red Sox. I don't remember which one was first. He hasn't played in MLB since 2021. He played for the Auckland Tuatara this winter of the Australian Baseball League. So he's still active in baseball. He'll probably be good for them. And Tom, I have to be honest with you, the rest of this team, I just don't know. I think they have a couple of minor leaguers who hopefully can turn into something. But let's give credit where it's due. I don't know a lot of these players. I know a couple of the ex major leaguers. They have a catcher here. Can I attempt to say his name?
Now, before you say his name, I do want to point out, according to this Michael Clare article, this guy led uh, CPBL. Was that what it's called?
Yeah, that's their league, the Taiwan
Yeah,
League.
he led it in home runs last year. So, they also have the CP. Dude, I keep getting this same notification over and over again for WinZip. Like, I'm gonna throw my computer out the window if it keeps doing this.
No, don't
And
let WinZip win.
yeah, it's gonna be lose zip.
Yeah.
So they have this catcher who, yes, we are gonna take a stab at his name. They also have the reigning MVP of CPBL, Lee Lin. So, I mean, I think they're bringing their best hitters. That's what it looks like. And yeah, like you mentioned, they've got some guys like, I don't want to say a lot of guys from the minors. But again, Taiwan is a country with a fairly robust baseball culture, so they're going to have the advantage if if they were playing a country like Great Britain or like the Czech Republic. As much as I love them, they probably have a pretty solid advantage over teams like that for sure.
Well, I think it's also important to know they're the host country, which is cool. I don't think they've hosted any WBC games before, so good for them. Keep growing the game in Taiwan. I'm happy about
Yeah.
that. And the other thing I think to keep in mind is I watched Baseball International's video. By the way, he's great. Go back and watch our episode that we did with him, and go follow him. He's awesome. But I watched his like preview of Team Taiwan, and basically he said, because I'm not familiar with the CPBL, and I think a lot of people think of Japan, NPB baseball, as between AA and AAA, maybe AAA level. So the best players in NPB can hang in the major
I think he said that he considers it to be maybe a little bit above AAA.
Yeah, like it's not quite the majors, but it's far
Yeah,
and away the best
he
of everything else.
probably has a point because AAA is increasingly just like where you stash like roster filler. So
yeah, I think the way talent is being developed is changing, and it's not so much linear. You go through every level. I think it's guys make the jump more than that. But here's my point though. If you think of Japan as roughly a AAA equivalent, then you think of Korea as roughly a AA equivalent, right? It's a step below Japan, but it's an excellent league. And the thing to keep in mind is the best players in Korea can hang in the major leagues, just like there are guys in AA who are blowing the doors off and they can go play in the major leagues tomorrow. But there's not a ton of them. You know what I mean? A lot of the guys are roster fillers. And obviously the same thing in Japan. I think the CPBL is probably around the high A or low A level of like, there are probably a few stars who are great, like the Yu Changs of the world, who aren't going to come to the majors and be amazing, but they can keep a roster spot for a little while. And I would assume there are probably a couple of guys like that in the CPBL, but I think it's firmly below Korea and Japan. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And I think the other thing that is nice about the CPBL, I was going to say to keep in mind, but that would have been the third time I said it. But they do have
say it again.
The other thing to keep in mind, they do have some imports to like bring the talent level of the league up. I know for whatever reason, my brain is just remembering that Justin Nicolino played over there.
All right, I guess we're playing Elmer Descends again.
Yeah, that's a good name, isn't it?
Yeah, you're gonna have a Justin themed one. Do I have to come with Justin DeFreitas?
I like that one.
Or Justin Ruggiano.
But yeah, so it is a good league. I think it's firmly the third best league in Asia, and it's obviously a developing baseball country. They're going to keep getting better. So yeah, that's all I have on Taiwan. I don't know anything about the non-MLB players. Although, can I take a crack at this guy's name, or would you like to go first?
No, you know what? I think that you should go first because where is it? Oh, here it is.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
All right, so
now see, I don't think it fit that time.
In 3, 2, 1, go.
Well, first I just want to say I just realized he wears number 69. So God bless him.
Oh!
All right. So his name is spelled Kung.
No, don't spell it. Just say it.
Just for our listeners, just so you know, it's Kungkuan space last name GiljegiljAw. All right.
Now here's how we're gonna do this. Okay. I'm gonna count you in, and I'm gonna take off the headphones so that I don't hear how you pronounce it, and then I'm gonna come back in and pronounce it the way I think it's pronounced.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Kungkuan Giljigiljaw. That's my guess. Kungkuan Giljigiljaw.
All right.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Okay, here we go. Ready?
Am I allowed to hear yours since I already went?
Yeah, you can't be spoiled now. Okay. Here we go. Ready?
I want to see you like shadow boxing, like getting ready.
Yeah, I'm gonna stretch. I'm gonna be like.
All right, go ahead.
Kungkuan Giljigiljaw.
That's pretty much what I said.
Is it?
I said Kungkuan Giljigiljaw. hang on. Now I can't even remember what I said.
You know what? What we cannot say about this gentleman. There's one thing that we definitively cannot say about him. There's many things that I think we don't know about this guy, but one thing we know that we cannot say is
His name is Dan.
we cannot say that about this guy.
I would argue that you don't know that.
I'll give you that. But you know what? I feel pretty sure. I feel safe saying that we can't say that about this gentleman. So anyway, that's Chinese Taipei. I think I should have had the Sean Power rankings pulled up. I think they rate somewhere around like the middle. You know, they're not.
Well, let's get into this at the end once we've gone over all the teams. What we think will happen.
You want to do our official power rankings at the end? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just.
By the way, I just noticed that Sean's cover photo on Twitter is Michael Scott standing on top of Dunder Mifflin, and he put an Astros hat on him. And for some reason, I think this is very amusing. All right. So look, there's 5 teams in this pool. Chinese Taipei, the host team, is one of them. There's another one, and I just pulled up their roster, and I already love this guy's name. I don't think this guy played professionally, like in MLB or anything. He doesn't have a picture on here, but this guy is one of the pitchers on the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and his name appears to be Dennis Burgersdijk.
I mean,
Burgersdijk.
Yeah, they got some great names, man.
I love it.
Yorgini Casimiri. They had a guy. I don't think he's on here anymore. I think he's a little old now. But last WBC, they had a guy named Diego Markwell.
Well, they have sick Narf loop stock.
They do. I heard. Now, see, I almost don't want to ruin it for you, but I heard that his name is that because it's his father's name, Francis, backwards, and I hate that. I don't know if that's true. I like it way better when his parents were just like, "What a beautiful baby boy, sick Narf."
Yeah, he looks just like a sick Narf.
They got some great names. Wendell Floranus.
Oh!
Of course, Dylan Farley.
Yeah.
They do have some random American names. Ryan Huntington.
You know who they have?
Kevin Kelly.
One of their catchers. His name is Deshank.
Oh!
Ricard.
Oh!
Oh, perfect. Friend of the show.
friend of the show.
Oh!
Let's get the coaching staff out of the way. Hensley Mullins is the manager. He was the first Curaçaoan player in Major League history. He's a bench coach, I think, with the Rockies.
Okay.
Hall of Famer Burt Blyleven's the pitching coach.
Oh, you skipped the best one. Tjerk Smeets.
I don't know who that is. Gene Kingsale is the first player from Aruba in history. He's the first base coach. I don't know who Ben Thiessen is. Andrew Jones, hopefully future Hall of Famer, is the bench coach. Mike Harkey, I want to say won a Cy Young, but even if he didn't, he was a really good pitcher, is the bullpen coach. And, of course, quality control coach, Everett Yanthoen. Of course.
Yeah, and hopefully that's how you say his name. But look, let's get to the real stuff here, which is the team they're going to put on the field. The Netherlands, frankly, that they have, like, your A-tier teams are the U.S., Dominican Republic, Japan. The Netherlands is right there with, like, Venezuela. I mean, they're probably not as good as Venezuela, but
I don't agree with
that. They're
in
the same tier as them, like Venezuela, the Netherlands, like Korea, like all of those teams are. You think so?
I think I disagree. I think they're one below. I think because
are they like a B minus?
I would call Czech Republic and China F tier, right? And then Australia, the rest I would call D tier. And what you're saying, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, all those I would call B tier. And then I think the Netherlands, Italy, Israel, Cuba, I would group into this. I would call C tier.
I feel like the Netherlands is better than all those teams, though. I mean, the Netherlands has a bunch of current good major leaguers.
All right, can I give you why though? I think they're a little top heavy because they do have stars, right? Xander Bogaerts, unmitigated star. Jonathan Scope.
Sorry, I think you mean Xander, but guards.
All right, that's enough of that. Jonathan Scope can still hit. He's a good player. Here's the problem. They have a lot of guys with a lot of name value that I don't know how well they're going to produce. Vladimir Valentin is a record holder in Japan, but he's like 38. I'm hoping he still has a lot of power, but even so, he's a DH. That's good, but Andrelton Simmons cannot hit anymore. He should be a good defender, but he's a complete zero at the plate. Didi Gregorius fell apart with the Phillies last year. I like Didi. I hope he does well and can turn that into another major league job. I'm not sure if it's going to happen. Richie and Josh Palacios are both young guys. I think they were a good get for the team. They didn't hit particularly well at the major league level last year. It's the WBC, so it could be different, but I don't think they're going to be stars. Roger Bernardina is like almost 40. And then their catcher is going to be Chadwick Tromp, who I like. He's good, but he's more of a depth catcher at the big league level. He's like a second string guy. He's not a star. And then on the pitching side, they're really lacking. Kenley Jansen's their one big guy, and he came out and said, "I'll pitch maybe if they make it to Miami." So they're not going to have him in the first round. So when they really need him to get them into the next round, they're not going to have him. And then, okay, if they get him, great, but we don't know if it's going to happen. And then the only other major league guys, Jair Jurgens, he's like 36 years old, I think. He hasn't pitched in like 10 years.
The world's greatest major leaguer to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, he was good on the Braves for a couple of years, but like he's old now.
Right.
Chiron Martis is old. He hasn't pitched in the majors in forever. And then the only other guy is Pedro Strop, who also is old now. He's 38, I think, 37, something like that. So like they have a lot of name value. I think the only absolute star they have is Xander Bogaerts. Ozzy Albies would have been great, but it didn't happen. And then the rest are guys who, like, I really want Didi to do well. I really want Andrelton Simmons to do well. Like, I like these guys. I just don't know if I see it happening. And then they've got a couple of minor leaguers like Franklin Van Gerp could become that's a great name, by the way, could become the first St. Martin born player in major leagues. That would be really cool. Derek West's in AAA with the Astros. Like, that would be cool. But other than that, like, dude, their pitching staff is like, I don't like what I'm seeing. It's a lot of Dutch league guys.
Their pitching staff is pretty weak.
Yeah, I like the
outside
Netherlands.
Of the star Dennis Berger's dish.
Of course.
But,
I like the Netherlands. I think they're in the right pool to compete because I think they're on that Italy, Cuba, Chinese Taipei like level. You know what I mean? Like, I think those are all kind of middle of the pack teams. Like, I can totally see the Netherlands making it out of this group. I think if they were in the Japan-Korea pool, they wouldn't. Same thing with the U.S. and Colombia, and Mexico, and all that. But I think they're in the right pool if they're going to move on. So I'm not trying to say it won't happen. I don't see them doing super, super well. And the other thing is, like, they always overperform in the World Baseball Classic. I think they finished 4th last time, which is really good.
You're right about that.
Out of a field of 16, I don't see that happening this time. I think there's too much going on. What do you think?
Well, they would play the runner-up of Pool B if they win, and
that will be probably Korea. That's a good team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Korea is so much better than this team that they're just like it's unwinnable.
I don't think it's unwinnable. I don't think
Korea would be the favorite.
Yeah.
But
you know what it is? I'm not an expert. I don't know who most of these Dutch league guys are. Just like I don't know who most of the KBO guys are on Korea. I think the thing in my mind that's bumming me out about the Netherlands a little bit is the quality of the KBO is like good comparatively. It's like we said, like a AA kind of league. So they're taking the best of KBO, so AA stars. And I don't know if the Netherlands league is like that. Like, it's not. Like when we had Seb on, he was like, you're not getting paid these great salaries. It's more like for fun, and it's guys that are good, but it's not amazing. I don't think the depth is there to round out the roster, and I think Korea has pretty good pitching, and I don't think the Netherlands has that. I think they should be able to hit. Hopefully,
if it does come down, which I do agree, I think it's going to come down to pitching for most of these matchups. Which is, we will get to this when we do the U.S., but that's one of the reasons why I'm afraid that the U.S. can underperform, because the U.S. pitching is not very good compared to DR or especially Japan. And we want to talk about pitching that's not very good. It is true that the Netherlands pitching staff anchored by Jair Jurgens
Right.
not looking great. Chiron Martis pitched 2 years in the majors. I mean, again, this team will probably smoke like Panama and Nicaragua. Like they probably won't have any difficulty against them. They can probably just score a whole bunch of runs because that they will do that. They are going to hit. Like I am less down on Didi Gregorius than I was on Philly's Didi Gregorius because
Oh, I did
Philly's
forget
Didi
something.
Gregorius is going up against like Spencer Strider.
Yeah, that's
how
true.
many times a year?
I did forget
Max
something
Fried.
important. I sold them a little bit short. MLB.com doesn't have it on there, but I think Sean tweeted Jerks and Profar is playing for them. So that is
Okay.
important.
Yeah, I mean
that is really good. I forgot about that.
is he going to play outfield for them? They only have 4 outfielders.
Yeah,
He's
probably
better
if he's
than
playing
all of
outfield
them.
in the majors, but wherever he'll have a spot. He's better. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He's better than the
and he
replacement
beefs
value.
up their lineup. If Vladimir
Yeah.
Ballantine still has anything in the tank, which I suspect he probably does, maybe not against Korea, teams with young, good pitching, but although Korea's didn't Odell say that Korea's relief pitching is kind of bad?
I think he said usually it is, but they look okay this
Is that what he said? Okay.
I think.
So yeah, I mean, the Netherlands, I might call them the favorite in this pool. It's not strong. Cuba, Italy, Israel, Netherlands are all like good teams. I would assume that as we go through these, it's probably going to be safe to say that the top heavy label will apply to most of them.
Yeah, I would agree.
So that's kind of what defines this pool in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But also the Netherlands, I mean, yeah, how much does what the Netherlands did in 2017 matter? But the Netherlands does always kind of seem to go further than people think they will.
I
they
could
beat
see
the
them
Dominican
doing well.
Republic one year?
I don't know. I could see them doing well. Like I'd like to be proven wrong. I like the Netherlands. Obviously, I like Seb, but I just think people might be overrating them a little bit because they have players that I think their name value is higher now than their talent, and I think that the Netherlands program as a whole gets a lot of hype.
Hey, you guys, hope you're enjoying our episode breaking down Pool A of the World Baseball Classic. I'm a moron, and I forgot to record the first meeting that we did with Phil Selig. You know him as Cuba Dugout on Twitter and everywhere else, his website, obviously. So I'll just give a quick introduction of him now. He's from Canada. He's got a lot of ties to Cuba. He goes down frequently and knows a lot of players in the Cuban Serie Nacional. And he just does a lot of work down there, and he covers Cuba. He writes, he photographs players. He has a YouTube channel. Go check that out. All of his handles are Cuba Dugout. And he was just a super cool guy. He was really nice. I DM'd him. He was willing to come on the show. A huge thank you to Phil for coming on the show and talking about Cuba. So anyway, I'm missing the first part, the introduction. I apologize for that, Phil. I'm sorry. But we'll have him on again at a later time just to tell us about exactly what he does and how it really is cool work what he's doing. So we'll definitely have another episode with Phil so we can do all that. But anyway, Phil's here to tell us about the Cuba national team for the World Baseball Classic, something I don't know a lot about. I know a lot of Americans don't know a lot about because of all the politics and everything that get in the way of that. So I really hope you guys enjoy our interview with Phil, and it went way better than I ever could have expected. He was awesome. He was a great guest. One more big thank you to Phil. Go check him out everywhere at Cuba Dugout.
So, Phil, do you want to just shepherd us through the Cuba roster? I'm obviously familiar with the MLB guys. I don't know anything about anybody else.
So, I mean, it probably makes the most sense to kind of take a look at this. Let's do it. Yeah, screw it. Let's do it alphabetically. Starting off with Arizbel Arrubarena. So if people don't know, signed with the Dodgers a few years back for $25 million. Had some issues. So he did make a cameo in the show, had some issues in the minor leagues, started a large brawl, and then had diabetes concerns. And as I said, there is a level two at the same time. This is when the Dodgers went big on a few players, Oliveira, Alex Guerrero. And so whether they just looked at it as a whole and said, we're cutting bait on this, kind of let him go. So he's a guy that returned to Cuba a couple of years ago. And if he was only considered a glove first shortstop for the longest time, his bat has played at least at that level. And he has played in other professional leagues. He did lead the Cuban National Series in home runs a few years ago with 19, and that was in Is in about 90 games. That's not a bad power showing as it goes, and led Matanzas to their first championship. So he's a guy that if you look at it, still young enough at 32, has international experience. I think comes in and is one of the first guys. I'll use this term, maybe a quadruple A player. And so mixed in with some of the other guys that we're going to talk about here, I think gives a nice mix. And if people were looking at it thinking that because probably a Jose Iglesias is a guy that if you were looking at major leaguers, I would think would be a nice fit. So for whatever reason, I don't know if Jose was approached or what his personal opinions are. I wasn't surprised by this because I kind of had the feeling that when Arias-Bell repatriated to the Cuban National Series a few years ago was kind of with the idea that this is the payoff. So yeah. So if we look at this kind of alphabetically, the next player is going to be a name that I think is going to be familiar for a lot of people, and that's Yoenis Cespedes. And so obviously he of the raw power, winning 2 home run derbies and more tools than a Home Depot. But very raw, and hasn't been able to stay healthy. I know the Mets probably look back and maybe regret that deal, and he might still be getting paid on that. But so if he is healthy in any way, obviously is a guy that in a short tournament like this, or phrased, if he can do any type of damage, any type of heavy lifting, I think that's what takes Cuba further than they've been over the past few years.
Do you have any idea what kind of shape Cespedes is in coming into this?
He has maintained shape physically in terms of that he did play a little bit in the Dominican League, but then I think either maybe because he was being a little bit cautious. I think he had either some lower leg or heel issues, maybe still relevant to the famous injury he had, chasing wild boars around that
I remember that
seemed to have dogged him. That everyone's saying he appears to be healthy, but he's still fit. So that's a good thing. It's just whether or not whether he can keep it together. Next is a guy who actually is the all-time leader in home runs in World Baseball Classic play with 7, and that's Alfredo Despain, Despagne, DePayne, same thing. There's a through line in this that there's often different ways to pronounce Cuban names.
That does make it nice and easy, though. It's not like me trying to pronounce the Japanese team's names a couple of episodes ago, and it was not
bad.
That was not good at all.
Yeah, it's I'll stay in my lane on this one. So is he close? He's closer to the end than he is the beginning. And actually, as an aside, him and Cespedes came up for the same grandma team in the kind of mid 2000s or earlier 2000s. And at that juncture, they were, kind of a two-headed hydra. And if you look at their numbers, were ridiculous. They were putting up video game numbers at that point. And so there's an argument to be made that Despain is probably the best Cuban slugger never to have appeared in MLB. And has been playing in Japan with SoftBank Hawks for the past few years. There's been a consistent 30 home run hitter when healthy and in shape and younger there. So him coming along here, we're going to find out if he has anything left in the tank. Otherwise, he is a veteran power threat and knows Japanese pitching at the very least. But is probably going to get the majority of the DH at bats, although Cespedes might be pushing for that contingent on his health. So the way that they manage that roster and that lineup is going to be key, because it's not fluid. Like we do, obviously the additions of a couple guys that we'll talk about that people are going to be more familiar with are really going to solidify that defense. But there are a couple spots where it's either a little bit of a logjam with guys that really should be DHing, or where we don't have a natural defender at that position. So otherwise, Despain does own a glove. And I guess could stand in the outfield.
He can get somebody else to break it in for him.
Yeah, well, no.
he sounds to me like they're Vladimir Valentin.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. Actually, as an aside to that, I have a good friend of mine who collects a lot of items from a chap who didn't make the roster, who I was hoping would, but would add to that problem, and Frederick Cepeda. So I picked up a couple of his gloves from Cuba one time. I was like, I don't think this has ever been used, and I don't mean it was brand new. I mean like it was his gamer. I was like, I don't think this has
Right.
ever been used. So
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like maybe he doesn't need them anymore. Like,
Can I ask a question about something you said really fast? What does grandma club mean?
So the Grandma Alazanis are they're actually the current dynasty in Cuba. It is the team so Grandma is the province that they played in. Sorry, because that same thing.
It's a location.
More Cuban
Okay.
words. So
I had it in my head of, you know how people will say like, oh, the WBC returns the player to the parent club. I thought it was something like that. Okay.
No,
Sorry.
the grandparent club.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. There was some weird thing that I didn't know about.
I've made jokes about that, so but the Grandma Elizanis, and actually the reason why the province is called Grandma, that was the name of the boat that Fidel and Che came and started the revolution on the way into Cuba. That was the name of the yacht that they came on. So it's GRANMA, not grandma, but grandma. Yeah.
So it always comes back to politics.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
all right. So who's next?
So next, Yadir Drake is another chap that signed with the Dodgers for less dollars, but might be in kind of that pipeline where they went big on Cuba. But is a gentleman that I think is probably going to get the majority of the first base innings, even though he's not a pure first baseman. He's probably a natural outfielder, but at first base, he won't kill you.
Right.
He's a guy that's returned to Cuba as well, similar to Aerobrania with Matanzas Cocodrilos, and has hit well there, but also has been lighting it up in Mexico. So probably another one of those quadruple A players, that good veteran bat that, again, people will say, oh, is this person going to be there? I was like, Drake's going to be there. So and probably will get the majority of the at-bats at first base. Next, we have Diane Garcia. So this is a guy who's played in somewhat obscurity in Cuba for his entire career, and this is one of those moves where I think they do want to reward some good soldiers, but a guy that maybe in the right situation against a lesser country, you can sub in at second base, third base. He's been playing quite a bit in their tune-up games that they've been having against Japan over the last little bit. He plays for one of the provinces that's just outside of Havana, and as a veteran player, is probably there to provide a little bit of depth. And again, they were going to bring along some guys to dangle a carrot to say, if you do stay in the national series, there is still a reward if you have a good career there. Yurisbel Graciel is another player that's had an impact over in Japan, along with Despain, playing for the SoftBank Hawks. Similarly, though, although he's a little bit younger, neither one of their contracts were picked up for this year, and I think that's the reality, that they're kind of getting a little bit older, and they might want to get younger. But he's a guy that has played well at that level as part of a dynasty, won multiple championships in NPB. He's a natural. He's played the majority of his career at third base in Cuba. I think he can still play that, but has played more left field in Japan. And I've seen some people think that he should be starting, and in a better defensive alignment, I think he would. But again, trying to fit Despain, trying to fit Cespedes in there is going to be a little bit tougher. But maybe in select matchups, if you do face off against a Japanese team, they might look at him and say he's got familiarity. So there is the potential for that. Next is Yoelkis Guiber. He's a young player from Santiago. I actually got to spend some time with him here in Canada this summer. He was playing in the Frontier League. It's a good young kid that I think projects probably is more on this roster, again, as a reward to a National Series player, but maybe is that late inning defensive replacement. Can play center field, probably grades out more as a natural right fielder, but can play some center field and play the corners that, if, as we've kind of alluded to some of those defensive configurations, maybe late in a game, you pull them as a left-handed bat, maybe as a pinch hitter in a good matchup, or as a pinch runner, can probably steal you a base as well. But I don't foresee, I'd love to see him get a shot to play more, but I don't know if that'll happen. The next name that's going to come across is arguably most important in terms of him being the first with major league ties to sign on, and that was Andy Ibanez, who spent a little bit of time with the Texas Rangers over the past couple of years. He is a second baseman, third baseman, could probably play some shortstop. Don't I foresee him starting at second base and getting the majority of the at-bats there. So he signed with the Tigers in the offseason. I think they did option him to AAA, so he's trying to work his way up. But he's a guy who's got World Baseball Classic experience, but I think he came along in 2013 and originally was expected to be one of the top prospects. And some people think that he was Yoan Moncada before Yoan Moncada. But his road's taken a little bit longer. But again, a guy who is good enough to get a shot in the show is a nice piece to have there. We have Ariel Martinez, who might be without a position, although I did see he did catch the other day. So again, a kid who caught quite a bit in Cuba, and I would love to see him get that shot for the sake that has also been one of the players in the pipeline has been in the Chunichi Dragons development system and played a little bit at their top level. Recently left there for an opportunity and looks to be as if he's going to get some regular at-bats with the Nippon Ham Fighters this year. Some speculate it could be left field, could be first base. They're working on that. Here, I think they do want to see him get some at bats, and again, if you could have him catching, although the speculation is he's not going to be the starter, would really stretch out that lineup. But he's as a young guy with a bat, obviously promising enough to get that shot in Japan, could do some damage. Luis Mateo, young shortstop for Cienfuegos. More probably there's for defense or just overall depth and again reward for a young guy that has played in the National Series. Good contact bat there. Be interesting to see how they use him, because again, I think Aerobrania is going to get the majority of reps at shortstop, but same thing, if a veteran guy, or if they get up early on a team, or if it's against a kind of a lesser nation, they might get him a look there, or a late inning defensive replacement. Now we get into one of the big names, obviously Yoan Moncada, who I think is going to be starting at third base. And a player that once was the top prospect in the entire world, has had some flashes in the majors, and still I think this year is going to be a big year. This year has to be a big year for him, but in this type of tournament, and even if just with his glove and kind of the specter that he brings to that lineup, is a big addition in every regard. And if he does damage, then Cuba's going to do damage.
Yeah, he's definitely he's one of those players where, like, maybe he hasn't, astonished consistently at the major league level, but one of the things that we always like to remind people is that, like, you're not necessarily playing major league level talent the entire time in the World Baseball Classic, which means that somebody like Moncada might, play a little, they might play higher than a fan of the White Sox might expect.
And I think that's one of the things where it's tough to handicap this, to temper the expectations, or to see that from country to country is going to be very different. And so that's where even managing these rosters, and again, hopefully if you look and say, well, this guy, I'd play him against these guys, but not necessarily him. Doesn't mean that he's a bad player, but for the first time in a long time, when you have that Yoan Moncada, that he can play against anyone, this side of, and it'd be a good problem to have. You get to the point where you're facing the United States, then you're looking to say we're overmatched, like, Jesus, at least we made it, they made it to that point. But even then, you still got a puncher's chance that you've got a major leaguer, a guy who still aspires, and some people still think there's a major league all-star in there to counterpunch that. So Yadiel Mujica is there again for some infield depth, but a guy who might be able to give you some late inning pinch hitting duty. Shortstop, second baseman, did make it as high as AAA with the Yankees before repatriating, similar to, again, with Yadir Drake and Aribel Arubuena, to the Matanzas Cocodrilos, and they leveraged that into a championship in the past few years. Andres Perez, young catcher from Matanzas as well, and very young. I think he's 21 or 22. So really, he's here, I think, to kind of groom him, that they want to have that homegrown kid that's there basically for defense. Maybe he'll get a chance late innings or late defensive replacement, or to work with specific pitchers against kind of a maybe that next tier of country. But good there, good for him to be there and have that experience. Luis Robert, however you want to pronounce
One
it.
of them,
The guy that is hopefully on the verge of a breakout of the majors, has shown when healthy can do some great things. Still young enough, I think, has as high a ceiling as anybody in the game. And if this turns into his coming out party, is what buoys the hopes that Cuba is going to do something in this tournament. But as a Gold Glove center fielder, as a rookie, it's 2/3 of the world is covered by water. The other third is covered by rover. So, can still go out there and get it. Although I guess this year, maybe the metrics didn't love him as much, and also, has had some issues with his legs, but having him out there, in center field and probably hitting third, that's a massive addition to the squad.
Yeah. I mean, one, defensive metrics, I think over a long period of time, like over a bunch of seasons, you can kind of be like, all right, I think that, I can take their word for it. In a lot of smaller sample sizes, defensive metrics are pretty random. So, and he generally passes the eye test. So I'm willing to give him a mulligan on that. And I think his bat, especially like you said, if he starts to break out, he kind of has carry the team potential, especially 100%. Again in a tournament like this. So like him and Moncada they have to be the guys they're looking to carry that lineup, right?
I would say he's the second best player in the entire pool behind Xander Bogaerts.
Yeah, probably has the higher ceilings. Xander Bogaerts has done more at this point.
Yeah,
so,
that's what I mean. Right now, going into the tournament, I think Bogaerts is the clear number one, and then I would probably put Robert and Moncada number 2 and 3.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And I talked to quite a few people within White Sox Nation and whatnot, and I think that as they go, again, Cuba goes, but I think depending on how their World Baseball Classic goes, is going to foretell how the White Sox season is going to go.
Right. Yeah. Are they going to be the White Sox of this past season, or are they going to be the White Sox of the year before that?
Yeah.
Well, Team Cuba isn't managed by Tony La Russa, thank God.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't think anybody on Team Cuba is going to get yelled at for swinging 3-0.
Yeah, going to get walked in a 1-2 count. Sorry, we derailed you.
Yeah,
keep going, Phil. I'm enjoying just sitting back and watching.
Yeah, no. So next is Roel Santos, who is more of a national series player, but has also played, I believe, in Mexico, Venezuela. He did play in Japan for a little bit. So nice contact bat that in the absence of another major leaguer, is a guy that you can put out there and isn't again against probably against everybody this side of Japan, Dominican, US is a nice player. And solid defensive player, probably your starter in right field, and might get the bulk of the at-bats in hitting leadoff.
Yeah, that seems to be what Sean has him doing also. So you know what? That's 2 sources. I'm willing to say Roel Santos, leadoff hitter, confirmed.
Well, we say that. You never know, though. Who knows on any given day what roster, what lineup they're gonna put out there? Because the one concern that I do have, and we'll see a level of this more on the pitching side, is that Armando Johnson, I guess the manager, did have some control over the roster, and he's not a big name. He's a guy that's coached in the Cuban National Series for many years, but in kind of a smaller. It's basically like Isla de Juventud. Like, I joke that if you replace the Pittsburgh Pirates with the La Isla Pirates, would anybody notice? But they're kind of like that small. They're kind of like that small outpost comparably. Right. So I think there's some of the arms that he relied on due to familiarity.
Okay.
Either from La Isla or because he's been involved with the U23 program. And our last batter here, Lorenzo Quintana, probably is going to take the bulk of the catching duty. And for people that aren't familiar, this is a guy who more recently was pushing and I thought might have gotten an opportunities with the Astros as high as AAA, then with the Marlins. maybe he's a little bit older, or they had concerns with his glove. His bat played really well at AAA, but I guess is, you know, kind of an overager. It is interesting to me, and I've talked to some people, including some of my friends in Cuba that are, you know, solid, some of the best defensive catchers that country's ever had. I don't know if it's a language issue because we've seen other Latinos that have overcome it, but we haven't really seen a Cuban-born and bred catcher come up and have the impact at the major leagues as opposed to any other position. So it's one of those things that I always watch, especially if we see prospects coming through. And it kind of, it's the knock, or it's the reason why they said perhaps that Ariel Martinez, who we mentioned earlier, isn't catching so much in Japan. Again, different language barrier, but a language barrier, and whether or not that affects it. But again, we've seen Spanish-speaking catchers from other countries come up and be able to do it. So I'm not quite certain, but that seems to be the common thing as to why catcher seems to underachieve at that major league level, despite producing some fabulous talent on the island itself.
Right. I mean, catcher is, at least in my experience, I'm new to catching myself, but I have played catcher on a team where there was a language barrier, and it's very difficult to come up with like a game plan or anything.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like, for example, if I'm catching and I have a pitcher who is struggling with one pitch, a lot of the time in between innings, I'll be like, hey, listen, do you want to, you know, shift how we're pitching people to maybe we'll tune down how much we use your curveball and turn up like your two-seamer or whatever, because you're controlling that better. It's really hard to have that conversation when there's a language barrier. And yeah, like a major league team will probably have a translator, but even that's just extra steps for the same conversation to happen.
And fewer teams, and my understanding is fewer teams actually provide translators than you would think, and they've been slow to adopt it. And kind of viewed through the lens, because I've had some conversations with Ozzie Guillen Jr., who actually was a translator with the White Sox back in the day. So he's kind of brought light to that even in today's day and age, it's like they're not providing those tools for the number of Latino kids that are out there, which is a little bit surprising. But you know, maybe that's what's at play there. So
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
But as we moved to the pitching staff. Frank Abel Alvarez is a young pitcher that has spent this past year with the Chunichi Dragons development system, and comes from Pinar del Rio, which has produced two of the other names that we'll talk about, in Raido Martinez and Milan Moinello, who have been lights out in NPB. They're hoping that he'll be the next in line. The tools are there, and we have seen how beneficial it is for some of these raw arms to come to Japan, not just because the talent level, the competition level, but something in that coaching seems to harness it. Their approach is different. I guess the nutrition's probably a part of it. Make no mistake about it. So they're hoping he'll be the next in line there. We have our first pitcher that has major league experience and does figure to keep pushing to pitch in the majors this year, in Ronald Bolanos, who broke in with the Padres a few years ago and has spent some time with the Royals. His numbers don't jump out at you, but the tools are real. I think he throws high 90s, which, you know, it's on the increase everywhere. It's a little bit slower with the Cubans, but the fact of the matter is that a guy who has some major league experience probably isn't going to shy away from that. So people are calling for him to start here. They may do that. He's been predominantly a reliever, both in the majors and the minors, but we'll see how they manage that.
Is there any indication that they're stretching him out to be a starter, or is that something that
we don't know just yet, because anybody that has sort of that major league or affiliation is kind of delayed in joining the team, so they're not taking part in these tune-up games. So and I haven't seen. So what I have seen, Rover, Moncada and whatnot, I believe are in Arizona, because I think they're breaking camp with the White Sox and they're leaving a little bit later. So it might be the same thing with Bolanos. So I guess at that point he'd be working out on the Royals kind of timeline, but not quite certain if that means he's stretching it out or how that would look. I guess
I
the
guess
other
we'll
thing that we
find
should,
out in a couple of weeks, huh?
yeah, I guess the other thing that we should look at there, and I'm curious to see how this plays out for every country, but with the timing, with the pitch count, I think is it 66 pitches maximum in round one.
Yeah, 65, I think. Yeah.
65. And then someone else said that basically if a pitcher throws 50 innings, then you have to sit them for 4 days. So, are we going to see some teams trying to milk that and throw guys 49 pitches and pull them at that point just so they can kind of
100%.
bring
They
them
did that
back?
last
And
time.
so,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Israel did that with Josh Zide.
yeah, so it'll be interesting to see overall. And this is also one of the things that I think could bode well for Cuba, because what you'll see is there's not that front of the rotation depth that really wows you.
Right.
Versus you do have some guys here that do have some experience, again, in the right matchup, if you're going with almost an opener strategy and hoping that they just limit that damage, and then to get to the bullpen, which there's some strength there. So Nikel Cruz, young left-handed pitcher, he's one of the guys that I think they're bringing along because they might be auditioning him to be the next in that Japanese pipeline.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I don't expect to see him get too many high leverage situations here, but a young guy, lefty, who throws hard by Cuban standard. Don't know a huge amount. I've seen him pitch a couple times, but the same thing is kind of, I think they like his velocity, and they're hoping that in small doses they can manage that properly. Roenis Elias is a chap that probably slots in as your number one starter based on the fact that he has pitched in the majors. He recently did sign, and I think is hoping to have a decent role with the Cubs this year. That's more predicated on the fact that in Dominican he was lights out.
Mhm.
And very recently, and so obviously it's probably a little bit warmer than some of the guys. I think he was 4-0, 0.92 ERA, and looks like he might have figured it out there. I know that's not the same as the majors, but it foretells well, or at least I think it plays well to the level of competition that we're going to see here. That and again, the guy who's been spent parts of 7 years in the majors, you'll take that experience. Melky Garcia, another guy who spent a little bit of time in the majors. The less you can say about that, the better. It's a short window. But that being said, has gone on and pitched and pretty much and had success in just about every other professional league. Some people are saying that similar, that he should probably be getting a chance to start. But otherwise, as a lefty, probably gives you versatility. Maybe you can, if you do want him to start against the right team, or bring him back, and same thing. A guy who has that experience probably isn't going to be stunned by the lights. A name I was a little bit surprised by, Elian Leyva is another pitcher that they figure will be a starter, who's predominantly pitched in Mexico. He had signed, he made it through, I guess, with the Braves, but that was a short, very short stint, but has had success in the Mexican League since. And, in terms of, again, the more professional arms you have, I don't think he's going to make or break it for him. But if he ends up being your number 3 starter, I mean, it could be worse. Again, depending on, are you looking at kind of an opener strategy and then stretching it out? If a guy can give you outs, you're going to take them.
Right.
So now we move into what I think is probably the strength, at least through round one. And could be that key to getting to the next round, and then could match up well if you're looking far ahead to Japan. And that's Arido Martinez, who has been the lights out closer for the Chunichi Dragons. And I'll mention him as well with Levon Moinello. Moinello speculates probably to be his setup man, and has been very effective, and has saved some games for SoftBank. So the two of them come from Pinar del Rio and are part of this crop of youngsters that basically are allowed to go to Japan, make some money, bring it back to Cuba, and then they do occasionally play in the national series. But if people get a chance, and I think you'll show the link to the article. I have links to their baseball reference. You can see that their numbers in MPB have been lights out, and people are looking at that, saying that, if you can kind of get to that back end of that bullpen, that's world class. Let's get to facing the Dominicans and the Venezuelans in the United States of the world, but at least through that first round and that second round, I think that bullpen's as strong as anybody that's out there. So now After all of that excitement, we do have a couple pieces that are the first guy that I mentioned, or when I mentioned that some of the players might have been brought along either because of the familiarity of the manager or them playing with U23. Udis Reyes might be one of those kids who's has a lot of tools, but to this point hasn't really shown that he has the box to put it in. One of the harder throwers on the island, so maybe they like that. And again, maybe they think that just being around will be good, and they're probably auditioning him maybe to get a shot in the in Japan. Jose Ramon Rodriguez, kind of a veteran pitcher, 28, 29. You want to be very careful with the matchup that you have with him. So he's good in the Cuban National Series, but kind of probably plays into it. Like if you watch the National Series, I watch it kind of enjoyment for the game itself. At this point, it's a little bit of a throwback. It's like the Freddie Garcia approach. Throwing all kinds of different slop, which can be entertaining, but I don't know if it plays so well at this level.
Yeah, probably not.
And Yariel Rodriguez, another player that has been over with Junichi. The reason why I don't necessarily combine him, although I think his best utilization is with the other relievers that are there, because he started the game yesterday. He was a former starter in Cuba. They've turned him into a reliever, and he was lights out this year for Junichi. I think that's his best role, but for whatever reason, they're indicating they might use him as a starter, but maybe an opener. I don't know. The name that surprised me, surprised a lot of people, Miguel Romero, who's a kid who's been in the A's system. I guess he throws 100 miles per hour. He expressed the interest, so they think they can work with him. He hasn't necessarily shown that much at that level, but has pitched in AAA. I'll actually be intrigued to see how they use him. I can't say he's probably the player that I know the least about on this roster, so interesting to see his inclusion, but again, the tools are there.
Carlos, I'm a little disappointed, honestly, that there's one out of this entire roster that you don't know a lot about.
Yeah, I don't even know why I bothered having you on.
Yeah.
and then we rounded out with a couple of guys that are a little bit more veteran and probably similar to although actually probably a little bit of a tick above Ramon Rodriguez there, and Carlos Vieira. His inclusion again maybe is a bit of a swingman. That's probably a little bit more of a reward, and a veteran pitcher. Same thing, but a little bit more of an artist. And then with Yoenis Sierra is kind of the de facto ace for the Cuban national team at this juncture. And a guy I've met and seen pitch many times, photographed many times, and has had success in Mexico. You want to be careful. Like I would pencil them in, or I think they're going to, as that fourth starter. I don't think you necessarily want him going up against the Netherlands of the world, but against that right matchup is a guy that's going to go out there and is going to give you a chance to stay in the game. I think he plays better as a starter. I've heard some people saying he might be a reliever. So there's options. There's versatility in there. It doesn't wow you, but I think the strength is on the back end of that bullpen in the pitchers that have had that success in Japan. The rest is going to be plug and play and trying to really match up, firstly against a lineup and then playing that game within the game.
What do you think is the ultimate outcome for this team, if you have to be honest?
So I think that the first game is going to be a challenge against Denmark. They've been the bane of their existence for over a decade here, but I think that the addition of the major league players, because make no mistake about it, the Netherlands are strong. But I think that if they come out, they win that game, they can move on, and I think it will be the Netherlands that would accompany, because the first two teams go. If they can cross over to that second round, anything can happen there. I like their chances of getting to Miami.
Okay.
You get to Miami. I think that's a very different game. But my expectation is you get to the semis. I think you've reestablished some goodwill. You've done a very good performance, and at that point there you don't hang your head for the sake of how deep I think that is going to be, and then you're basically getting into playing against teams that are stacked with major leaguers.
Right. Yeah. My guess is that they will end up playing Japan in the second round, and that's a rough matchup for most of the teams in the tournament. If they win the pool, though, if they come out ahead of the Netherlands, then they are going up against Korea, which we were
It's another
talking
tough
about the
matchup.
Netherlands earlier. And yeah, I'm assuming Korea is going to go,
Yeah.
but like who isn't? That seems like, again, like I said with the Netherlands, like I think Korea is the favorite there, but I don't think it's like a heavy favorite. Not like, Japan versus Cuba. Like
Yeah.
Japan is gonna win that in all likelihood.
Yeah.
So I mean there's some surprise potential there for sure after they get out of pool play. They have a roster that it's I mean anybody can beat anybody on any given day,
Yep.
that's a platitude, but like Korea is better, but not by as much as maybe they were in previous years.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's an exciting team. Phil, we've only got a minute left. I don't think it would be fair to ask you to do a third meeting. Why don't you tell us? Well, let's have you on the show again, man. This has been incredible.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us what's the best place to find you and what you're up to and everything and what do you got coming up?
Yeah, so I try and make it as easy as possible. CubaDugout.com. My handles are Cuba Dugout. So I do write, I do videos. A lot of that's more maybe on my experiences on the island and some history and that sort of thing. And on Instagram and Twitter and most of the photos I try to share on my own. So just trying to share kind of all levels, everything from the history of the game, where it's been, where it's going, all of that. So. Cuba Dugout, CubaDugout.com.
CubaDugout.com. There you have it.
Yeah.
Phil, this has been awesome, man. I could have talked for 2 more hours, and
I know,
let's do another episode. Just dive into it. Maybe after the World Baseball Classic, talk about what happened.
Sounds good.
I
All
also
right,
would love to talk about the Cuban Baseball League just outside of the context of international.
Well, March 22nd, the next Cuban National Series starts March 22nd, and so I'm hoping to be in Havana as close to that as possible. Maybe the 26th. Depends on how the schedule works out for Industriales, which is the team in Havana. But the other thing is people always ask, "Oh, where do you go?" And luckily I'm a confirmed bachelor and can kind of leave on the fly and do whatever I want, because
Right.
I don't like to book that far in advance, because anything, things can always screw up. They can flex the schedule, or it looks like this, because the number of times where I've been watching something, been like, oh, if I go there, I'll get to see this, and this. Then something changes, I'm like, fuck. So, but
Right.
So it's good when I go. Like I said, I'm friends with a number of the players now. There's a level of it that I dread the run up and the amount of work and the amount of running around versus when I finally do get to be there. But
Right.
even then, it's never easy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's the same thing. Like if I tell people if they're looking at going, oh, I want to go on a trip, I'm like, do you want to go on my trip or do you want to go on a different trip? Because
Yeah.
I need to get my head checked, but it's worth it for the sake that, like I said, I've get to hang out with players new and old, and kind of told. It's funny that even the world culture and although I guess I got to be careful whether I call it Taiwan or Chinese Taipei, or
do whatever you want.
There's the politics. That when I was at the hotel one day, I see this older gentleman walk up wearing a Chinese Taipei hat, and I'm like, that in like a local. I was like, that doesn't just happen. I said, tu habla un poquito de español or inglés. He goes, yeah. I said, your hat. I said, where's that from? Oh, my friend who plays for Industriales. Do you know who they are? I said, yeah, he gave it to me. I said, okay. I said, you're a baseball fan? He goes, yes. And I pitched for Industriales. I went, what? So get to find out that he pitched for when they were La Habana, basically in the very first Cuban National Series. And lives in the neighborhood. So it's like, my friends, come over in the park that's across the way this afternoon if you like baseball. We'll talk about that. So now every trip that I go down, I meet up with him, hang out in the park, and we drink, buy a bottle of rum. We sit around, tell stories, and finally play with this guy and that guy. And
Wow.
So actually, if you're looking, that made me think, because I put a gentleman that you should probably try and talk to if he's available. Is Andy Brown. Andy B is an artist. He's a Brit.
I've seen him. Yeah,
he's the official painter for Team Great Britain, and so he'd probably be good to talk about that. He might even be traveling with the team. I don't know if his schedule's working up there, but he's gone around the world and painted all kinds of different stadiums. So I put him in touch with my friend with my friend Freddie, who pitched in the first national series. He did a painting of them, and so it's just to see how that world connects, and you know, there's all these other leagues where it's almost like kindred spirits. Oh, you like this weird baseball league? I like this weird baseball league. Tell me about it. You know.
Yeah,
that's so cool, man. Well, since we did start on the meet, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
When I think of Team Cuba, the name that sticks out to me, and I don't know how he is as a player, but just his name is hilarious to me. Victor Mesa and his brother Victor Mesa Jr.
And their father Victor Mesa. Actually, it was Victor's the elder his birthday the other day. So
really, well, hey, happy birthday!
So I remember one of them. I want to say it was Victor. Victor was like a heralded prospect, and then his brother got signed because it was like a package deal, I think. Why? Where are they at? Because I remember them being like a big deal. They're not on the roster.
So they've kind of switched positions, and I'm not surprised by that, because actually I know both of them, and I've done some photo and video work for them, and actually there's probably a perfect example of how not everybody's path off the island is the same, and I bet you that dad basically paid their way out because he's allowed to come and go. Victor, it's getting late early. I don't think he's going to make it. Victor Jr. still has a chance for the sake that he's only 21. I think he's still in advanced A, but probably should be in AA this year. Actually, the two brothers might end up at AA together, still with the Marlins. But if that happens, if they're playing together for long, they won't be playing together for very long, because I think Victor will get released.
Is there anybody else? Because that's the only other Cuban guy that I can think of. Is there anybody else that you're surprised didn't make the roster?
I thought Frederick Cepeda deserved a spot as the all-time leader in hits and in a number of things, and basically to be, is Miggy playing?
I believe he is. Yeah,
I thought he said he wasn't at first. So Miguel Cabrera is the only player that'll have played in all five. Frederick Cepeda, I think, should have gotten the chance, except that I understand why he didn't. He would have been redundant, I guess, in terms of Despain, Cespedes, a number of players. Like, there's only so many of those DH at bats.
Yeah, they're not the
Phillies.
They're not the Phillies here.
Yeah,
exactly. And so I think that was there. Jose Abreu, I think.
Well, that was politics, right?
Kind of. I think that was more just, let me tell it through this anecdote. And I like Twitter in general, but sometimes I got to catch myself.
You got to be careful.
Sometimes I got to catch myself, especially like if I, and I get it. It's like, who the fuck am I? You know? But, and if I interject myself into someone else's kind of thread, but like I saw last week, somebody on the White Sox, Moncada is going to be all broken up with Abreu gone and all this. And I went, I haven't heard that they're at odds or anything like that, but I've never heard that they're best friends, you know, and even as Moncada said, it's a business. So I think he'll be fine. He either gets it done or doesn't. Guy comes back, why are you trying to twist my words? It wasn't for debate. And I was like, have you met them in Cuba? Are you friends with their former teammates? Have you been, and like this guy's trying to get smart with me. And if you actually look at my profile pics, like I didn't want to be, I never want to pull the, do you know who I am? But like I came.
You should have.
Yeah. How many times you get to do that in life?
I came real close on it. Like, because when I wrote back, and like the guy was being a dick, and I just said, have a nice day. He goes, that's what I thought. I went, oh yeah. And I just wrote back I said, tell me where I am in my profile picture. And I'm in the stadium where I first saw Moncada and Abreu play, and have met them in Cuba, to say that they're different types of personalities and all of that. So more, I think where I was going with it is Abreu is a very private person. So I actually met him. I've met him twice. I met him like just in passing that first game that I saw him. And then a couple of years ago, like I said, I was surprised. I was in Cienfuegos as a spot, and I'm doing photos down by the railing, and I look over my shoulder and I'm like, no way. I was like, it's like, P2's here. And so I went and approached him. And actually what sucks about this story is I was staying at the house of his former star pitcher, who was supposed to join me that day at the game, except he started a new construction company. He's like, I can't make the game, but we'll have some beers afterwards. Because if I'm there with him, would have been like, Norberto, this is my friend Phil.
You got
Instead,
the in, yeah.
I'm the only
Right.
I'm the only gringo in the entire damn building. While this guy is trying to kind of keep a low profile. So I walked
Right.
and said, hey, how are you doing, my friend? Do you mind if I take a picture? Like, I'm not supposed to be here. So now I respect that 100%. And then I'm like, fuck, was I just a fanboy? Like, you know, and then at least got to send some messages to him afterwards through my buddy. Said, you know, it was good. He's like, oh, he's fine. But all to say, they aren't training together and they're not traveling together. People are living different lives. So it's just kind of funny. Like, oh, I know this. I'm like, you don't know shit.
Yeah, it sounds like he was just like, well, they're both Cuban, so obviously they're best friends.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're
not even
inseparable.
teammates anymore.
Man.
Yeah.
So,
Well, dude, this has been awesome. I appreciate you taking all the time. I appreciate you giving us all your knowledge on Team Cuba, a team that I really knew nothing about other than the MLB guys. And yeah, let's do this again soon, man. This has been a pleasure. Is there anything we didn't talk about you wanted to get to?
Well, I got one thing.
Yep.
On your way out, who's your pick for Team Cuba Cy Young Award and Team Cuba MVP Award? Who are you going with?
MVP, Moncada. It depends how they use that bullpen. Give me Yariel Rodriguez, the young kid that I said that I think they're going to use him wrong, but it might end up working for the best. And also because I've been chronic, and part of it is like I will admit some of the biases that I have. Like I do like to see guys succeed that I've seen them come from here to there, and they can say I've photographed them, I've done that, or you know I've sent messages back and forth. So that's what I'd like to see, and you know, but yeah, same thing. If they make it to the semis, I'm more than pleased with that, and so it's just a matter of how they kind of piecemeal that together.
All right, guys. Well, you heard it here first. A Team Cuba expert weighs in on who he expects to be the anchors for this team, as in the anchors who, you know, hold them in place and give them something to push off of instead of that just sink them. Just saying.
Either that, or they lose game 1 to Netherlands and they're screwed. So take your pick.
Well, hey, it's happened. I mean, dude, honestly, like I have my fears that the United States is going to underperform. So I know how that, you know.
I think they're fine. I know the pitchers dropping out hurt them, but then I don't think Dominican has the depth that they thought they did.
No, they still have more than the U.S. though. You know.
I there's some part of me likes that U.S. roster better.
Well, it's the offense is unrivaled.
Yeah, that offense is nuclear.
And it is like the U.S. has lost a bunch of pitchers, and you look at it and you're like, oh man, they're throwing like Kyle Freeland out there. Kyle Freeland will be an ace on pretty much any other team, other than I guess the Dominican Republic and Japan. But like a guy who's in the majors for a little while and has hung around and been good is like the worst pitcher in the U.S. and any other team would kill it. Like look at Dean Kramer is the absolute ace on Team Israel. Like he wouldn't make Team USA. I love Dean Kramer. I want him to do well. But you know what I mean? Like it's I think the U.S. is going to win, and I don't think it's going to be close. But
and that's where it'll be interesting too, just to see how those matchups go. And so but the other thing I think that lends itself or opens itself up, and why see the betting odds are kind of interesting, but because at first glance you kind of look at them and say, yeah, that makes sense. You're just going to rank the teams and how I think they should finish, but then also look at the skewing from one bracket to the other, like you say. If Netherlands, Korea, Japan, Cuba, okay, so you got 4 teams you look and say should come out of there, but then you go to the other side, U.S., okay, Dominican, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Colombia, Canada. Like, you know, you're starting to get where it's stacked, and a few of those countries, either someone's going to upset someone, especially if it gets that single elimination, or you know, another country is. That's why I don't have high expectations for Canada, other than maybe they could be a disruptor. But I think people walk in and they assume too much. Like, hey, they assume I'll be cheering that much for Canada, but or secondly that they should, or this will sound funny, they should do more damage, but I don't expect that they really should. You know,
right?
Yeah. Well, they just lost Nick Pivetta today, right?
Yeah.
That's a bummer. He's probably gonna be their ace, right?
Dick Pivetta, the former NBA referee.
Okay. I think Canada's they're in an unfortunate spot, but I mean, who knows? They might be able to do something. It'd be fun. I like Canada. They lost. They don't have all their guys, but it'd be fun. Dude, we've taken up like 2 hours of your night. We
I
should
know.
let you go.
Cool. No
is
worries.
there anything else we didn't get to you want to talk about?
No, think that covers it.
All right.
So,
All right, CubaDugout.com. Go check them out, Phil. This has been an absolute blast. Thank you again, man.
Thank you to Phil for coming on. Brief talk about Team Cuba, just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Not-
Let's
Nothing
dude,
too crazy.
this is already going to be a long episode. Let's just dive right into Team Italy.
Okay.
They've lost
so,
some guys. They didn't get Nimmo. They didn't get Rizzo. That there's definitely some Italian. Aaron Nola would have been able to play.
Right.
There's a lot of guys they didn't get. They still have some major leaguers: Joe Biagini, Matt Festa, Sam Gaviglio. Obviously, the Italian Matt Harvey.
Right.
I'm just going
he's
down the
one
list.
of the more overtly Italian players,
Of
along
course.
with Stephen Woods Jr.
Of course. I'm just going down the list and naming the MLB players. Phillies legend Vinny Natoli, Andre Payante, Brett Sullivan is in AAA, I think. David Fletcher and his brother Dominic, Miles Mastrobuoni, Nicky Lopez, Robel Garcia, Vinny Pasquantino, Ben DeLuzio, and my most exciting player, Sal Frelick, first-round pick. And on the coaching staff, they've got Mike Piazza, obviously, and then Blake Butera, Chris Denorfia, Jason Simon Tachi are the names that are recognizable to me.
And also Joe Su, HSU, who is a coach.
Italian fellow.
What is he the coach of? Well,
Team Italy.
No, you know what? That's on a need-to-know basis.
That is right.
This team is sort of surprisingly good. Like, you wouldn't expect Italy to put out like an excellent product. I think Italy's domestic league is one of the better ones in Europe.
In Europe, yeah.
Which, again, it's in Europe, so there's only so much that actually means. But they have a lot of guys who are kind of sneaky, probably going to be pretty good, like Pasquantino, Mastrobuoni, like Nicky Lopez. I mean, guys with major league experience are going to play up in a tournament like this. I don't think that they are likely to pass Netherlands or Cuba. I think that they are going to be kind of like last time, how we discussed that Australia is sort of going to have a target on its back for the teams that are trying not to get bumped out.
I agree. I think
this team is there.
I think they're the team that the Netherlands and Cuba are going to look at and go, if we beat them, we're in. And so they're going to pitch their ace against them. I mean, I don't know how it'll all line up, but I think Cuba and the Netherlands obviously are game one. And I think the loser of that is going to go, we got to beat Italy. So we can get in. Because if you can beat Italy, you can probably handle Chinese Taipei or Taiwan, whatever.
And both of those teams have both of those teams have a pretty solid advantage over Italy.
Yeah.
And again, anything can happen, but I think Italy has put together a good team. It is good to see them put out a product like this. They do have a couple of domestic players on here, which, again, is good to see.
They have a guy from San Marino. Did you notice that?
I did see that, yeah.
Alessandro Ercolani. That's a good name.
Ercolani.
I'm saying it. I'm sticking with Italy. I said this in our first episode with Sean. I'm going Italy and Netherlands. I think Cuba's getting booted. I mean, I'm glad we talked to Phil because I didn't like Cuba's pitching at all. And after talking to him, I like Cuba's bullpen. Right. I don't like Cuba starting. Roenis Elias, who knows what he has left. But then, like Phil said, if they throw that Yariel Martinez guy, who knows how he's going to Rodriguez, sorry. Like, who knows what he's going to be as a starter. And I didn't recognize any of those started. Ronald Bolaños. Okay, sure.
Elian Leyva.
Right. I like Italy, man. Matt Harvey's not good anymore, but in the World Baseball Classic, I think he can play. Like Jason Marquis, was the ace of Israel when they went on a run. That was a different World Baseball Classic, but like Thiago da Silva is kind of a junk baller that throws people off, and Sam Gaviglio probably start. He's a major league guy. I like Italy's bullpen though. Like Vinny Natoli I think kind of good. He didn't get a lot of play in the majors, but I like him. Biagini, like Ryan Castellani, Matt Festa, they have a lot of like major league depth guys, which is what you want at the World Baseball Classic.
Right. I don't know. I think that their starting pitching, I mean, is Matt Harvey an improvement over Roenis Elias?
No, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say they're better. What I'm trying to say though is I think Italy's bullpen is pretty good. And I think if their rotation can hold out, then I think it's just gonna come down to who can hit, and I like it. Like they got like Nicky Lopez is good, Vinny Pasquantino is good, David Fletcher's a wizard with the gloves, Sal Frelick should be good. Like I think Italy, this won't make sense, but I'm saying Italy, Netherlands, and Cuba are like all have like a 50-50 chance. Like I think I wouldn't be shocked if any of them moved on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the way I look at Italy, I think this is going to be our first big disagreement here. Is I look at Italy like they have all the same strengths as Cuba. They just have worse versions of it. So like their lineup is pretty solid, but Cuba's lineup is better. Their starting pitching, both teams are a little iffy. I have a feeling that the bottom end of Cuba's starting pitching is going to turn out better than Italy's. Roenis Elias is probably better than Matt Harvey, but I wouldn't. I'm going to guess that it's not substantial.
It a wash.
Yeah. Their bullpen, if they have guys who are over in NPB, which they do at the back end of this bullpen, that is just better than anything Italy has to offer.
But Italy's got a lot of like Matt Festa. Wouldn't he be good in NPB because he's decent in the majors? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but also at the same time, like like it is also going to depend on like what these guys throw, because I don't know what.
Yeah. I think they're a very similar team to Cuba. I'm just going to stick with my gut. I like Italy. This team would look a lot better with Brandon Nimmo. But
yeah, there's some big empty shoes that could have been on this roster that did not make it.
Yeah,
early picks, like when Sean put out kind of like his dream team roster, Italy did look like they were going to be solidly better than Cuba.
Yeah.
Cuba has the same problem, honestly, because there's some big names for Cuba that are not here, like we mentioned. Like if Cuba has Jose Abreu at first base, like that makes them arguably the favorite. Like they could have. I mean, even like somebody like Yasiel Puig, I think he's like playing pretty well. Is he in
overseas.
Mexico now?
I don't know. He's playing somewhere foreign, but I mean, I like Italy. I'm gonna stick with my gut and say I think they advance, but they're the clear top three. Should we dive into the last team, Panama?
Right. We move on to Panama, and Panama comes with a roster that has some major league talent. They aren't bringing a lot of like elite players. I think they will surprise some people.
I think they're going to be better than everybody thinks. I think they have some decent guys. Like Jaime Barria was good in the majors this year. Like Paolo Espino, I'm kind of bummed, said like I probably won't play, but if they get him, he's a major leaguer. Like they got a lot of. They do have some corpses, man. Severino Gonzalez.
Yeah,
that's the name I don't know why. But like Justin Lawrence,
Randall Delgado.
Right, Randall Delgado. But like Harold Arauz, I didn't say that right, but like if he wasn't a major leaguer, he got close. Alberto Baldonado is a major leaguer. Javi Guerra is a major leaguer. Justin Lawrence is a major leaguer. Like,
Justin Lawrence, famously very
Panamanian
sounding name.
Miguel Cienfuegos is an interesting guy to me. He did well in the ABL last year, and I think he like kills it in independent ball. So we'll see what he can do. Ivan Herrera is a catching prospect for the Cardinals. He's a young guy. He's 22 years old. So if they can get something out of him, that's nice. Christian Bethencourt is a really interesting player. He's like a great defender, not much hitting wise, but he can play a lot of positions. He's a nice little player. He's
an NLP.
Oh, here's another corpse, Ruben Tejada.
Ruben Tejada, former Met.
Alan Cordoba was one of the last vestiges of that MLB phenomenon where you'd take a guy in the Rule 5 draft who has zero shot of making a major league impact on the off chance that he could have one, and then you let him rot for the entire year at the major league level. So that's
right. They're chasing the next. They're
and
chasing that.
And you know what it really turns into? It turns into Tyler Goodell.
And you know what they say about that.
I despise him.
That's what they say.
And the last big leader, Jonathan Arauz, is a utility guy. He bounced around Red Sox. Nothing special, but a major leaguer. I don't think any of their outfielders are major leaguers. Of course, the Panamanian LJ Jones. And then their coaching staff has a couple of guys who made it to the majors. Enrique Burgos, I remember. And of course, Cirillo Cumberbatch is a good name.
Yeah, relative of Benedict.
That's a good name. But that's Team Panama. I think I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. I think of the teams that qualified this year, they are the best. I have them above Great Britain, although I do like Great Britain now that they've got some reinforcements like Trace Thompson. I have them above Nicaragua. I think they're just the next step in Nicaragua's evolution. It's pretty much an all Panamanian team. They don't really have any foreign guys, and they've got a lot of like fringe major leaguers, which I think Nicaragua aspires to be soon. And obviously,
it looks like they also have this guy Jose Ramos. Looks like he's a pretty decent prospect for the Dodgers.
Yes, that is true. You're right. You're absolutely right.
So, I guess so we know who we think are the top teams. I guess the real question here to finish everything out is, who do you think is going back to qualifiers out of this pool?
Who's going back to the qualifiers?
Yeah, who's getting bumped out?
I think it's Panama. I think Paolo Espino, as silly as it sounds, was a big loss because Jaime Barria, they'll probably have start. I like Jaime Barria, but that's only one guy. And then I don't know who you have start after that. And I think the problem is Chinese Taipei. Like they're at home, like that's nice for them. I think their domestic league is probably better than Panama. I don't know that for a fact. That ask somebody.
Sounds like a safe bet to me.
That it sounds right to me, but I think that they're just depth guys are probably better than the Panamanian depth guys. And I obviously I don't think Panama is as good as Italy, Netherlands, and Cuba. So I think it's a 2-horse race to be the bottom, and I think Panama probably loses that, but I could see Chinese Taipei losing that.
So there's actually going to be a lot riding on the Panama versus Chinese Taipei game.
Yeah, or obviously if either of those teams could sneak out a win against the big three, that would radically alter the landscape. I think that would guarantee the next two to get a spot. I have this pool playing out as Netherlands winning, Italy qualifying alongside them, and then Cuba just missing out, and then I'm going Chinese Taipei, and then Panama. Okay. How about you?
So I agree. Netherlands is the favorite. I think by less than I originally thought before talking to Phil, but I still think that the Netherlands has the advantage. I'm going Cuba second, then Italy, then Chinese Taipei, then Panama. I would not be shocked if Cuba won the pool. I feel like they have a huge incentive to win the pool because the runner-up likely has to go up against Japan in the semifinals, and I think that they want no part of that.
I don't think anybody wants to be part of it. Right, would you be shocked if Italy qualified?
No. I think
if Italy advanced, I mean.
I think it's the same as Cuba winning the pool. Like, it would be a surprise, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
Right. It's not like if Panama qualified or something.
Yeah, if Panama went to the semifinals, that would be like the biggest upset in World Baseball Classic history.
Yeah. So, it is a shame because it's not like we beat up on China last episode, and I think justifiably so, being like this team sucks. They're not going to win any games. They're going to get mercy ruled, and they're going to get kicked back to the qualifiers, and they're not going to qualify. Like, goodbye, China. And I'm fine with that take. I still agree with it. And I was okay with that because I was like, great, that means the Czech Republic gets to stay in, like obviously Korea and Japan and Australia, that's great. I don't have a team here that that I'm okay with having a like I like all these teams. I like that Panama got in. I thought they were the highest baseball country that hadn't been in last time. Like I thought they were like the next one up. So I'm glad they got in. But also like Taiwan, flourishing baseball culture. I want them to stay in. And then the big three, I obviously like. So it's. I think somebody's going to get screwed here in my mind. I think it's probably going to be Panama.
But whoever fails or whoever goes out of, try this again, okay? And try one more time.
Oh!
Whoever goes back to qualifiers from this round, I suspect is going to be a heavy favorite next time around.
Yeah, they'll be a good team, and they'll be a good team in the qualifiers.
So I think they're going to be fine.
I want next qualifiers. I want Brazil in so bad. I think Brazil's gonna be such a fun team, but we can do a separate thing about that.
Yeah, we'll do a non-pool episode about Brazil. But
so we'll do
who do you think? Okay, so we got. Who do you think are your top? Nah, and that might be a bad question. That's a lot to get into. I was going to say, who do you think are your top 5 players in this pool? But that's a big question.
Yeah, that's a big question. We got to wrap it up. I think Bogarts is going to kill it. I think Robert and Moncada are going to I think the Stars are going to kill it. I think none of these teams have good pitching, so I think it's going to be a slugfest, and I'm gonna enjoy watching it. It's going to be a track meet.
That will be fun to watch. Yeah,
it'll be a lot of fun to watch. So anyway, let's wrap it up. This
Guys,
has been a lot of fun.
Yes,
this first has been a lot of fun.
Thank you to Phil, relative of Bud Selig.
Yeah, huge thank you to Phil. He gave me way more than I thought.
Yeah, we got 2 episodes out of this.
Yeah, not even I thought, but than we needed, really. He was just this fountain of information, which was great. And I just figured, he'll come on, he'll talk about the rosters for 20 minutes, and then we'll be done. And it was way more than that. And I want to say a huge thank you to Phil. He gave us way more time than I expected. And he was obviously super knowledgeable. So go check him out at Cuba Dugout everywhere. And if you want to reach us, if you want to come on the show and talk about something, if you want to play a game like Elmer Descends or something.
I want to play a game.
If you want to do that.
If you want to do that, you can find us at the Baseball Pod 2 on Twitter, or you can email us at thebaseballpod@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out that way. I also want to give one more shout out. I already talked about this a couple episodes ago, but Ed Lidas is a radio host in Connecticut. And he has been a friend of the show ever since he asked me to get Sean on his show. And and he's just been really cool. He's just been really, really nice. And we've emailed him back and forth a lot. He's been really helpful with putting me in touch with people and everything. And he also gave us a shout out on his show. So I just want to say, Ed's been really great. Thank you for all the help, Ed. And if you guys are in Connecticut, go check out his radio show. And
frankly, if you're not in Connecticut, get there.
Actually, he sent me a link to you can listen to it on the internet, so I'll just put that in the description. And I also go bother Ed or bother me, I guess, and I'll give you Ed's email. As long as that's okay with him. I told Ed, hey, why don't you just release it as a podcast? And he was like, I'll see what I can do. So go bother Ed and tell him to make it a podcast. He's got a cool show where they just sort of talk about the history of baseball in Connecticut, all these different things. So
hey, tell him we sent you.
Yeah. Tell them the Baseball Podcast sent you. That's
use our name and get 15% off.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and the last thing coming up, we've got 2 guests. We're going to do a guest for each pool that we review. We've got Brandon Plant, who's a hockey guy. He does Senators coverage, but he knows a lot about Team Israel. I was talking to him on Twitter. He's a cool guy. So he's going to be our Team Israel guest for that pool. And we've got Russell Easom of the Bat Flips and Nerds podcast, who I'm sure everybody's familiar with. They're great. They're really, really cool. So Russell's going to be coming on to talk about Great Britain's pool. So those are the 2 episodes we've got coming on next. And I also want to say thanks to Brett Walker, who is a writer for Bat Flips and Nerds. And I asked him to come on, and he basically was like, you should talk to Russell. Russell's our guy for the World Baseball Classic. So anyway, thanks to Brett for setting that up. And thanks to Russell and to Brandon preemptively for coming on the show. And so you guys can look forward to our reviews of the next 2 pools. And obviously, again, go follow Sean Spradling. He's the source for World Baseball Classic content. And I can't wait, man. I took off a bunch of days for the World Baseball Classic. I changed around my schedule, so I went out to work at night. I'm really excited, dude. I can't wait.
Yeah. I have good news. I did not take any days off for the World Baseball Classic, but I do have the kind of job where I can watch TV at work if I want to. So I will be doing that.
Well, and most of the games are really early in the morning or really late at night, so it shouldn't affect. There's only a couple of games. There's only a couple of games each week that are, what I mean, like in the workday. A lot of them are like 7 p.m. or later or way before work. Like I'm not getting up early. I'm not getting up early to watch like Chinese Taipei, but
Right. Now, so we are going to be doing a live watch for the opening couple days. We're going to be watching it together. Are we going to podcast live?
I don't know. We're going to have to figure all this out, dude. I don't know what
are we going to prove to people Are we going to prove to people that we are not the same person because they will finally see us in a room together?
We could do that. I mean, I could just put up a picture of us in a room together, but that's fair.
No, I think too easily faked.
Well, wait. Ready? Let's turn this around on them, on all the listeners who, for some reason, have stuck around with us for this long. Let us know what you want. Email us at thebaseballpod@gmail.com or reach out on Twitter. Our DMs are open at the baseball
hit us
pod
up on
too.
hit us up on our individual Twitters if you feel like making it personal.
Fair enough. I'm at Ethan Pechersky. What are you?
I'm at Lord of Shade 57.
Yeah, our DMs are open. If you guys want to come on and play a game or something, go ahead. If you want to give us advice, which we sorely are lacking in, go ahead. Let's call it quits, man. Thanks again to Phil. That was remarkable. I loved every minute of it. And yeah, looking forward to the next episode of the World Baseball Classic.
And guys, as always,
His name is dead.
and we'll see you on the next one.